Hi, so my name is Layli and I'll be talking about the women's rights movement in the 1800s. So, in the 1800s, women were oppressed and they did not have equal rights. Some examples of this were that women were not supposed to have any independence. Unmarried women could not live alone, they had to live with their father, and they could not take care of their own money. Women were not expected to speak in public, so they could not give public speeches to voice their opinions. They were not supposed to be leading any movements, so although the anti-slavery movement was very big at this time, they were not expected to take part in it. Women could not vote or sit on juries, and they also did not have equal pay as men. Women who were married also were oppressed. If they were married, their husband had total, complete control over them. They had no control over their own property or money. It all was in their husband's name. So as an answer to this oppression, women started the women's rights movements. A lot of women started off as abolitionists and then they started to fight for women's rights. They started to take better educational opportunities, and as this movement gained momentum, some men also began to help women in their fight for the rights. As any movement, there was opposition. Some other women believed that females did not need any new rights. They believed that men and women were different and they did not have to be equal. Most men believed that women should just stay at home and not go into public, and they shouldn't work for change. They wanted to keep women oppressed. Many people believed that women were too weak to function without men. They expected them to have guidance from their father or their husband throughout their whole life. In response to this oppression, women started to take actions to create change. In 1838, Sarah Grimke published Letters on the Equality of the Sexes and the Condition of Women, which was a pamphlet arguing for equal rights for women. And then in 1845, Margaret Fuller published Women in the 19th Century, a book that explained the role of women in America and how that role should change for the better. One of the most important events in this movement happened on July 19, 1848. It was the Seneca Falls Convention, the first public meeting on women's rights in the U.S. At this convention, the Declaration of Sentiments was signed. This was a document of injustice towards women, and it had 18 charges against men in it. Then, in 1860, another very important event happened. In New York, a law was passed that granted married women ownership of their own money and property. Soon after, other states followed this example, and more women had more rights. Important women in this movement included Elizabeth Cady Stanton. After attending the World's Anti-Slavery Convention, she was not able to participate only because she was female. She was angry at this, and she planned to form a society to advance women's rights. This society became the Seneca Falls Convention, which, as you know, was very important. She also wrote many documents and speeches of the women's rights movement. Finally, she was a leader of the National Women's Suffrage Association. Another woman was Margaret Fuller. She was an important transcendentalist, and she gained popularity editing the famous publication The Dial. She published Women in the 19th Century, which, as we know, was an important book in the women's rights movement. Lucretia Mott was another woman who helped in this movement. She helped Stanton announce the Seneca Falls Convention, and she helped to organize it. She planned to form a society to advance women's rights. Lucy Stone was another woman. She was a well-known spokesperson for the Anti-Slavery Society and a gifted speaker for women's rights. Susan B. Anthony was one of the most important women during this time. As you probably already know, she brought strong organizational skills to the women's rights movement. She argued that women and men need equal pay, and she wanted to change laws that affected women's rights to their property and money. And so she started campaigns to change that. Her efforts were one of the main reasons that New York law passed that allowed women to have rights to property and money. So, in conclusion, women's rights was a powerful movement that happened in the 1800s. It had great successes, such as raising awareness for the unfairness towards women and the victory with the law change in New York. Many amazing women were prominent during this time, and they made history by changing the way America viewed women. It paved the way for future major successes, which included in 1920 when women finally got the right to vote. Without this movement, who knows how long it would have taken for women to finally be equally treated. Thank you.